The losses of the A-50 radar aircraft and the Il-1822M command center were a heavy blow for the warring cave. True, the Russians still have several sides from which they can assemble an analogue of the lost A-50, but they still need to try. Now Ukrainian drones will receive a bonus under the cave arches for some time. They are already flying to St. Petersburg, and on Friday they cheerfully lit up the Rosneft oil depot in the Bryansk region. The cave itself begins to shake from political instability. In Bashkiria, several thousand people protested because of the unfair sentence imposed on activist Fail Alsinov. The action in Baymak was dispersed, but now the Ofar swamp gurgles timidly. The local King Kabirov has already called the activists mercenaries of the West, eager for the collapse of Russia, so there will be no mercy. They will clean them up and put them in prison for a show. And Putin in Ofar will now definitely get more than 70% of the votes in order to prove the region's complete loyalty. The authorities of Novosibirsk banned local residents from holding a rally on January 20, because the protest action threatens human rights and the foundations of the constitutional order, but the collapse of the housing and communal services does not threaten. This means that Novosibirsk residents will have to push even harder on the march stumps. By the way, the election banners advertising Putin in the cave do not include a photo of the leader. In Moscow, instead of it, they use the image of the Kremlin, in St. Petersburg the monument to Peter, in Novosibirsk the Siberia Arena, in Voronezh Petrovskaya embankment, and so on. The face of a rat should not irritate the deeps, who have already realized that nothing good lies ahead for them in the future. And the point is not that eggs from Erdogan are expensive, and Turkish banks have stopped accepting payments from Russia. As, by the way, are Chinese banks. It's just that Putin is a guarantee of the growth of the internal crisis and war with the whole world. Perhaps even nuclear. It's probably a good thing that drugs are disappearing everywhere. Without the same insulin, diabetics will quickly go to heaven, avoiding nuclear frying. And the rest will still have to suffer. Europe is finally beginning to understand that yesterday's humanoid partner has mutated into a giant monster, and now it won't happen without a big fight. The Commander-in-Chief of NATO Allied Forces in Europe, Christopher Cavoli, announced that a large exercise will start next week, in which 90,000 troops from all countries of the bloc will take part, as well as Sweden, which will join NATO soon. The scenario of the beginning of the Third World War will be worked out. Moreover, the conditional enemy is very reminiscent of Putin's Russia. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius states, "We hear threats from the Kremlin almost every day, most recently against our friends in the Baltic countries. Therefore, we must take into account that Putin will one day even attack a NATO country." British Foreign Secretary David Cameron feels like a politician from the 1930s, presenting Putin as today's neo-Hitler. "We cannot appease Putin, as we did with Hitler," Cameron warns, summarizing, "We have a responsibility to stand up to the evil that his invasion represents." In response, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov announces his refusal to negotiate with the United States on issues of strategic security and nuclear weapons. This means only one thing: there will certainly be a war, and the boys will not deny themselves the pleasure of using the nuclear weapon as the final argument to punish all of humanity. The chairman of NATO's military committee, Dutch Admiral Rob Bauer, warns that the alliance should not take for granted that they will continue to live in peace, and they need to prepare for a war with Russia that will greatly affect ordinary people. The illusions have dissipated. No one is counting on, maybe it will pass, anymore, because it won't. The monster craves closure. This suicidal desire is dictated by the realization that there is no place for it in the future. He has nothing to offer humanity tomorrow, neither ideologically nor technologically, but today he is able to capture his image with frightening inhumanity and excessive cruelty. And he has no choice but to die in front of the whole world, taking at least someone with him. Because the existence of heaven is doubtful, but the fact that people can just die at the will of the Russian monster is obvious to everyone.